Good afternoon, all. How's your Sunday afternoon? I'm running a little late today, but I thought I would get on and talk a little bit about toxic sustainability. Of course, we've all heard of toxic masculinity because that's all we've heard for years. But sustainability is the term being flung around. And of course, we're being held hostage to the ends of the agreement, Agenda 2030, the sustainability agreement. And what we're learning so far is that, well, it's toxic sustainability because their version and our version of sustainability are quite a bit different. And we're going to discuss that. And we're going to discuss the major benefactors of this global agreement, Agenda 2030, in which we have been reset to attain its goals globally. But the fact is, what's interesting is that, number one, we're not all on equal footing. And it doesn't apply, this agreement, equally to everyone. It depends on what your status is. And of course, we're a developed nation here in Canada, UK, Australia, United States. China is considered a developing country. And that means that they don't have to meet a certain amount of goals that we have to meet by like 2030. They don't need to really get there till 2050, 2060. I'm learning. It's interesting because, of course, this entire nightmare we're enduring began in China. It did. Now, because I'm a truther, I was researching a lot. I did all these videos from last January before it became a pandemic. I was on it from the first case. And as I watched it roll out, I started tuning into these guys on YouTube. An American and a guy from South Africa, Lau Y 86 and Serpenza. And it was from them that I learned that the Chinese government in Wuhan had put on, the CCP government, put on a communal dinner for 100,000 people, like when the first cases had been discovered. And they went ahead with it. So these guys were like all these, they've been a ton of clues for me because they have one podcast called ADV Podcasts. And they chat the whole time and they really get into the propaganda in China. Now, when I first came across them, they were still living in China and they started out as cheerleaders and champions of China. They loved living there. In fact, they married Chinese women. And had half Chinese babies. But as the two of them, these guys got together and they started touring China and on their motorcycles and filming it and, putting this together as a real project. In the past, they had been teachers and done all sorts of what they call white monkey jobs. Anyway, they can really give us an insight into China. And in any case, they actually had to flee the country because, well, how it works there is the government comes to see you and all of a sudden there's people looking for you and then the military takes you away. It's just the way it goes down. And here in the West, we have been absolutely indoctrinated with this belief that they live like we do. And that's just not the case because in social media, you have to have ID and everything attached to your social media presence. And if you say anything against the government, they're coming looking for you. If you continue doing it, they start threatening your family. And then you disappear. these guys had a friend who showed them around northern China and did nothing more than that. And he's been in jail for 2 years. Was taken and again did nothing. So this is what goes on there. And again, we continue to get this romanticized view. And in fact, it's, well, when I'm looking at Agenda 2030, and I've spent a lot of time at this, the benefactors, well, okay, first, let me go back here. Now, the fact is they went into their first lockdown, and then they came out. And then what I saw was the opportunistic use of lockdowns. And it happened to 600,000 people just north of Wuhan. And that area had been a problem area for dissidents. Now, the only difference between China and us right now is that China's free, like they can pretty much move around, but they're all tracked and traced now. That's happened. So they also have a QR code, so they know, again, if they're ill, they have to stay in. If they get a red light, they have to stay home. There's nobody to call and discuss it with. It's just you stay home until the light is green. Unique QR codes are the proper one to get into stores and this type of thing. But again, life goes on. But here we are with our small businesses being knocked down. That's not happening in China. Again, they had the initial lockdown. And interestingly enough, their lockdown, they waited until the Chinese New Year to call it. When people in the whole country were going to be off for a week, I think a week or two anyway. So, in fact, their lockdown wasn't really that much of a problem in business. Now, the other thing is that on January 1st, 2020, the UN shut down shipping in the entire world, meaning that anyone who hadn't retrofitted their ships and cargo, and you got to know those are a lot of old cargo carriers out there, they weren't allowed to transport anymore. Now, the thing is about this low sulfur diesel is that there were no suppliers. There were like 2 or 3 in the world. And Sinopec, which is a Chinese firm, invested in the tar sands. They have a plant in Wuhan. And in fact, they were retrofitting that plant for this low sulfur diesel. Now, because I'm a sky watcher, I was looking at the SO2 levels all over China. And last year, at this time, I was sending out a lot of footage of those SO2 levels. And a lot of people didn't get what I was going for. They weren't understanding. But remember, we were getting all those photos of people dropping, and everybody was like, it's 5G. Well, in Wuhan, I honestly believe, like, what I was seeing was death levels of SO2. Now, I talked about this in a video of mine, and I was writing this on Facebook. And then the Monday after that, now, my video, it's like, what's really going on in Wuhan? The thing is, I didn't have very many subscribers, but I was getting a whole lot of views. I think I got like 400 or 500. And for me on YouTube, that's a lot. In any case, when I started looking through the demographics, it wasn't Westerners watching it. It was all from China. But like that was 60%, 70% of the views. But we have to know they don't get YouTube in China. The only people who would have access to that are like people who would be, using a VPN, which isn't that many people. Maybe it is. But I think I was getting a little bit of attention on that because the Chinese they're watching. In any case, that for me was encouraging. SO2 is definitely an issue. And this was what I was seeing when all these ships stopped. Of course, they were talking about the pandemic and they were warming us up to the airlines slowing down. But I was seeing the airlines speeding up. I wasn't seeing the disruption they were talking about in the air. That's what they were telling us about the passenger jets, and we were seeing that. But that wasn't the true picture on flight radar. In fact, the flight traffic increased. It did. And of course, the disruptions, I started to see those. Once I understood about this UN halt, that's when I did my little audit of South Saskatchewan Walmarts, and I drove to all these little towns. I had some promotions going on too, so I piggybacked and went in and took a whole lot of photos, and that's when I was discovering shortages way before the toilet paper, like a month before the toilet paper, because it was already present. And because we're in the middle of the country, I knew that that was going to, well, that would affect us first, right? The middle. In any case, China, I had to start looking, and I thought I would look in about their electricity sector. And that's a huge sector for China. So I thought I'd give you just a little synopsis. China's electric power industry is the world's largest electricity producer, passing the United States in 2011 after rapid growth since the early 1990s. In 2019, China produced more electricity than the next three countries, US, India, and Russia combined. Did you know that? Most of the electricity in China comes from coal, which accounts for 65% of the electricity generation mix in 2019. By the end of 2019, China's installed capacity for renewable energy was about 595 gigawatts, while coal power capacity was 1040 GW. I hope I'm right. I don't know. In 2020, China added 40 gigawatts of solar power and 18 gigawatts of wind power, thus bringing the total installed renewable capacity to 850 gigawatts. As of 2020, China's installed capacity for solar power was 240 gigawatts, and the wind power was 240. The latter generated by more than 135,000 turbines. Coal-fired electricity production declined from 2013 to 16, coinciding with a major boom in renewable energy and a decline in GDP growth. In 2020, Chinese Communist Party General Secretary Xi Jinping announced that China aims to go carbon neutral by 2060. It sounds like it's a whole way, like a long way off for China. And it is. Even Africa is, because they're developing nations. Greta didn't get in the Tesla and head off to China with this sector going on, coal-powered. She came to the tar sands to gut our energy sector, and that was all a plan. They just, again, didn't just give it up if there wasn't a plan. And it's a restructure plan. Again, in accordance with Agenda 2030, which again does not require China to meet us in the middle. It doesn't expect to take out all their small businesses. It doesn't, again, because we're developed, we're way further ahead, which actually provides China with a significant advantage, don't you think? I think it's a huge advantage. I have this little piece of, it was a China Fashion Week, and the PPE sector that has now been developed out of China. And again, coming our way, not required in their society, but again, providing, and again, it seems that China is containing us to the goals of this plan. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't get is I had a bit of a history here with Q and BLM, and I was making videos a long time before BLM and Q decided to come at me. But as I got into Agenda 2030, that's when I started to run into Q, because some of the messaging from them was, well, contrary to what I was trying to teach, because it's designed to keep keep people off the ball. Like, the ball is Agenda 2030. It's the UN agreement. But it kept, again, all these distractions. It was very frustrating for me, because I've been trying to hammer Agenda 2030, and like when you're in sales and you know somebody is standing in your way, Q has been standing in my way for, again, the truth getting out, the trusting in the plan. They're actually trusting in Agenda 2030. But these are freedom fighters that, again, don't understand what they're fighting for. BLM. It was the minute I started No Mask Saskatchewan. I was going on and on about social media. I was going to protests. I was doing all sorts of things. I didn't hear from them until I started No Mask Sask. And then they came in for the kill. Literally, like 2 followers on Instagram. And within a couple of days, there was over 1,000 comments on one photo of women holding a sign of hate. I started to understand that the two of them actually play off each other. And by listening to my vloggers on YouTube, Lao Wai and Serpenza, and their collective podcast, ADV Podcasts, I've been learning a whole lot about how propaganda is enacted in China, and how, again, misinformation and subterfuge is just about infused in their culture. These are the guys that gave me the clues that Q and BLM were coming actually from the same entity. And again, because, okay, this is a little weird for people, but I'm an energy person and I know similar energies. And when both of them were coming at me at different times, it was the same energy. Again, the clues I get from these other guys about the propaganda, and then the endless lessons they have literally in their podcast showing you footage, and because they understand Chinese, they can actually communicate with us as to what's really going on and what's being said. It made me understand that now Q, if people don't understand this yet, as far as I can tell, it was a entity thrown in to the right to break it down, to infuse it with misinformation, discredit, and to infuse racist lines. And then, of course, you've got BLM that's all about the racism. Kind of working together. And again, running on the same energy. China. Wouldn't that make sense if they were the entity that infused Q into the right? Because that is what communists do. BLM, well, we know they're communists. So again, the perfect strategy to taking down the West. Now, what was interesting to me the other day, mostly, was that Biden referred to the Uyghur Muslims, okay, 1 million detained, sterilized, organs removed, re-educated. He referred to that situation as cultural differences. Now, this is coming from Biden, who's all over BLM and the mask and everything behind. Again, BLM is part of the sustainable agenda. It's written, their goals are written into Agenda 2030. But they're being used opportunistically. And it makes me believe that literally China is actually behind UN Agenda 2030, because it's actually going to contain the world to a point that, well, they have so much money and power, they've got such an advantage over us right now that we will succumb to their rule because, well, they're providing all the infrastructure. It's their investments. It seems pretty plain to me. What's kind of scary, and you'll probably get this after this article. According to PIPA, USAID has conducted a technical mapping of its self-reliance indicators to the SDGs, which are the Sustainable Development Goals for the UN and Agenda 2030. These are parts of the agenda, especially within the journey to self-reliance, where it could really be helpful in reinforcing and affirming and advancing what the U.S. policy is. And yet it's not being used. Because of that sensitivity and skepticism around the multilateral nature and the way in which it was created collectively. Both former officials suggested that USAID's hesitation or inability to engage more deeply with SDGs had been a missed opportunity to advance the agency's own goals. They both cited the example of SDG 16, which aims to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. The inclusion of this goal in the agenda represents a significant shift from the previous Millennium Development Goals in that it aligned development with governance, fairness, and rights. By standing on the sidelines, the U.S. government is missing out on that shift, even though it helped bring it about. The largest bilateral donor on democracy, rights, and governance is not aligned with the goals that USAID staff helped to craft, wrote Mendelsohn, who also previously led USAID's democracy, rights, and governance portfolio. I'm just going to move down here. China embraces global goals. The Trump administration's effort to distance itself from the SDGs contrasts sharply with other countries, including China, which have been quicker to recognize them as an opportunity to brand their international agreement as part of a global cooperative effort. Chinese President Xi Jinping has actively sought to create links between SDGs and China's own global infrastructure investment agenda, the Belton Road Initiative. Faced with criticism of opaque investment deals, unsustainable debt, and environmental harm, China has successfully courted UN leaders to solicit their endorsement of the BRI's potential contribution to achieving the SDGs. The world will benefit from a Belton Road Initiative that accelerates efforts to achieve sustainable development goals, UN Secretary Antonio Guterres said at the Belton Road Forum for International Cooperation in Beijing in April. They were still having conferences in Beijing in April. The 5 pillars of the Belton Road: policy coordination, facilities connectivity, unimpeded traffic, financial integration, and people-to-people exchanges are intrinsically linked to the 17 development goals, he added. In 2016, the United Nations Development Program, under then Administrator Helen Clark, signed a memorandum of understanding with China to cooperate on Belton Road projects. In 2016, China also released its own extensive national plan for implementing the SDGs, even linking the agenda to its current 5-year plan. The U.S., on the other hand, is the only OECD or G20 country that has not completed a voluntary national review of its efforts to make progress on the SDGs. See, China looks like a little cheerleader there. Woo, rah, rah. But again, they don't need to achieve what we're being charged with achieving here in Canada, United States. See, United States doesn't have their official plan out, but Biden, of course, he came out with the first day in his executive orders supporting goals of Agenda 2030. So they're going to be a little bit more time before they're official, but they're actually enacting everything right now. It seems to me that China is winning this game. And of course, we can see every system right now is coming from China, starting with the lockdown, except our lockdown isn't ended. You see, they can't make us track and trace here yet. They have to warm us up to all of this. Where in China? Well, it's a police state. You just do what you're told. I mean, again, you're not leaving your house or you're going to go to jail. They have to massage us a whole lot more. Refuse to be invaded if your country won't do anything to protect itself from China's influence. Oh, dude, though, the bottom line is even the United States, it's our countries are largely owned by these people. And they are. It is. This is just the reality here. And what's happening right now is, again, this UN agreement, again, we are locked down, and this is why, to the ends of this agreement. They don't want small business. They need to gut the airlines. Again, toxic sustainability being, eugenics. This is what's happening, because right now they're literally culling the herd. Prime Minister Modi, India. Okay, we all know, and it's being said, that people that want to get pregnant or are pregnant should not get this gene therapy. Prime Minister Modi, I got him on film going, pregnant women and children should get this right away in India. It's disgusting. We have to understand that every road right now ends with sustainability. And the reason I'm calling it toxic sustainability, because it is about culling the herd. It is. It is going to push people with inflammatory conditions to closer to death. If you're not the strongest, you're not going to make it. I don't believe you are. The people in the homes, they have no hope. They have no advocacy. They've got no one on the inside taking care of them anymore. And again, that's eugenics, keeping people away from each other. Keeping single people with one person allowed to come and visit them in their home. Going to remote populations of Indigenous in Canada with the military, who are vaccinating 6 times faster than everybody else, according to CBC. It's eugenics. And now, when I was in Ecuador last year, guys, just over a year ago, I did a film called What Does China Want with Our Seniors? Because I was already seeing the writing on the wall to something sinister going on. And that was the purchase of, I think it was 23 or 26 nursing homes in Canada by, it was Anbang Insurance, something like that. Now, it was even in Parliament debated with Rona Ambrose and Trudeau about the ethics of this purchase. How in the world were they able to buy in? But what happened was that this insurance firm went belly up, and the Chinese government stepped in, and therefore they own all of those nursing homes. And right then I was going, and it was one of those films that was on YouTube. of the parliamentary exchange between Trudeau and Ambrose. And it was an acting job. And I shared it right away on Facebook going, what a crock, what are they doing? Because it was like they were reading a script. And then, of course, weeks later, the Chinese government picked up this nursing home. And again, people don't understand, the Chinese government owns these nursing homes. Now, this insurance firm owned a lot of nursing homes in the United States. So again, this is worrisome. The UN apparently doesn't believe that, again, in a socialized healthcare system, that if you are a weight on them, and again, if you've got 2 or 3 different conditions and you are one of those people who continues to go back for surgeries, like I know a woman who's had 3 or 4, I think 4 open heart surgeries. Yet she won't change her diet. She won't do anything about what is going on to cause all that. And well, the fact is we have until now, sorry, without my little backlight there of my computer, the fact is we've always been allowed to keep going back to the doctor and what's going to happen, or to the hospital, or to surgery, and again, continue to do ourselves in. This isn't going to, again, clearly it's not deemed sustainable anymore. And again, this is how they're restructuring our healthcare system. So you've got these new sets of policies that now guide the avenue to get to surgery. I shared an article yesterday about how Democrats now make up all of the psychological, and what was that again? Oh my gosh. Sorry, it was that good. And actually this is a worthy read, and I might just read it because I'm not sure I was supposed to have access to it, because when I tried to share it, it was, you don't have access. So let's go find that. Here we are. Okay. Yes, I found it on Neurocritical Care Society. Neurocritical Care Insights and Perspectives from Around the World. I'm interested in this end because that's an end that can be impacted by the gene therapy. Inflammation, right? Inflammation in the brain. I'm not sure. Okay, that was my little piece here. The Great Political Divide in Medicine by Currents editor, posted 10 days ago now. And this is by Jamie Nicole Labuzetta, MD, MSc, MPhil, Division Neurocritical Care, Department of Neurosciences, UC San Diego Health. In the early 1990s, most physicians were Republicans. 3 decades later, the demographic composition of the medical force has shifted 1-2, and so has the overall political alignment of physicians. Now, physicians are roughly split between 2 major political parties, though data suggests that some specialties have political tendencies. For instance, practitioners in fields such as surgery lean Republican, whereas those in psychiatry and infectious disease are more than 2/3 Democrat. This is what's leading what's going on right now, everybody, just so we understand this. Again, the infectious disease, that's the World Health Organization too. So again, the influence in the United States to Democrat leaning. And as well, the psychiatrists that, wanted, again, this was kind of the 1-2 punch of dealing with COVID deniers all at once, coming from that end. Relatedly, there is also interesting literature to suggest that intrinsic political ideology shapes some major treatment decisions and health systems attitudes. There are a number of hypotheses for this shifting landscape, but the major ethical point is that roughly 50% of our colleagues, who we presumably respect as people, and for the care and expertise they provide, will not share our political preferences and affiliations. And this disconnect has a potential to impact the workplace in unexpected ways. On January 6, 2021, our nation witnessed something that hadn't been seen over 200 years, a mass attack on an invasion on our Capitol building. When I walked around to the team shortly after the completion of rounds, mouths were agape, and there were a lot of majority-led anti-Trump murmurings. What these individuals did not notice was that a trainee sitting with downcast eyes, shifting in his seat, decidedly not insulting our shared president. When I checked in with this resident, I found that the conversation made him feel uncomfortable. He hadn't told his neurocritical colleagues, nor should he have to, that he voted for Trump, but he worries what his colleagues might think of him and ridicule or harass, and the ridicule or harassment that he might have to endure. Harassment that he has already endured during other rotations. As the medical field continues to diversify, so too shall our opinions and views. Our commitment to our patients and colleagues is that we won't let these impact our care and our professional relationships. The NCS Code of Conduct provides a guideline for ethical behavior of neurointensivists and for members of NCS. Within this code, there is an emphasis for respect on patients and colleagues. Where differences exist, it's important to grow through active listening and consensus building. Political identity is an important part of self-identity, and people should be aware of the ethical, implicit bias, and practical workplace conversation implications of these political tendencies. Our arguments should never be focused on ad hominem attacks for bullying, denigrating beliefs, or name-calling. We deserve better than that. We have a professional responsibility to be better than that. But this is what's going on, guys. See, now we have to understand the leanings in our hospitals. And again, coming up is the fact that if you do not want this gene therapy, the mechanisms are in place for this to be a psychiatric issue. And we've been seeing this in media. They've been laying, just like they set the table for Q and for conspiracy and every other narrative going now, racist, and then feed it. They have been laying for over a year has been the psychiatric narrative that, again, people that do not want the gene therapy, that there might be a little screw loose. And that's tragic, but that's where it's going. And it's scary to me to see that there is so much leaning, again, and being acknowledged within this sector of medicine already. And again, that's got to have union influence from the back end, right? Being supported. In any case, kind of scary. The more I learn about, again, Agenda 2030, and then again how everything is fitting in, well, if China is taking over, I'm probably in a little trouble. And I kind of figured that out last year, but anyway, we keep moving forward. I took my focus off them. I really did, because again, we get distracted into our regions, and I did with No Mask Sask, and that's what I like about Anti-Maskers Canada. Although I'm going to change the name, I think. We're already at just about 1,800 members. It's just growing like leaps and bounds, and it's international. I'm not doing controlled opposition over there at all. I'm doing a true picture of where we're at and keeping people's eye on the ball and not allowing the shit show of distractions, because All of these distractions are meant for us to not understand what's going on right now. And if I feed that narrative, it's, again, not helpful to us. People don't get, like, we are literally fighting against communists here, and they're using our free speech against us. And I've been saying this forever. The sheer amount of information that was dropping in No Mask Saskatchewan all the time, it was ridiculous. And again, the repeats and all of that. And even if I tried to keep it cleaned down, again, the information was so, again, overwhelming that, well, again, we're not getting anywhere. And I'm just like a person who likes to be productive. And I want to make sure your time is productive as well. Let's look and see what we've got here. Those 23 homes you mentioned wouldn't by chance be the reported outbreaks across the provinces. Now, interestingly enough, I watched that really closely at the beginning, and the bulk of those homes are in BC, but there's a few in Quebec and Ontario, and I think Manitoba. But the bulk is BC. And the BC ones were clean. I checked those at the beginning, but who knows now? I haven't, again, been watching that. The fact is, again, people have been isolated. Like our hospitals, you can't just, as a visitor, just mosey on in anymore. We're being kept apart from these people, again, who are at their weakest moments without advocates. It's not a good thing. I'm getting a story in from another woman who, again, had a terrible time with her husband who passed away this August. I understand, again, that the world has to look at all of these features. But the fact is, it is not ethical to do what they're doing. We're watching our politicians play ball with all of this. And this is the scary part because they're literally in it. Now, I watched a little exchange with Michelle Rempel and the Liberal, whatever they are, because honestly, these people are like walls. I call them walls because they're sitting there and they're back and forth through an exchange of asking a question, going through a moderator, going to the wall where the wall says, I'll have to check, and then it goes here and here. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? I mean, I would throw something if I had to deal with that nonsense. But when you watch these guys, again, who understand China, it's describing their system. And what's happened right now is literally, like, has China actually taken our country? Have they? Because again, everything is not our landscape. This is China landscape. All of these public rules, the masking, all of it, that again is not our landscape. And we are being held to a hostage under states of emergency. Again, public health orders superseding everything else, which is why these constitutional challenges are just nonsense. They're not what we need to be doing. The Constitution doesn't mean squat with public health measures. They could throw all these tickets are a waste of time and money. What we need to be doing is finding another angle, because that angle is just not workable. Again, they have given us the answer with JCCF and all their little containment boxes. No, we have to stop following their model, because again, they have given us the model. The model of the protest here in Regina was what the angry Albertan had to contend with yesterday and cancel his protest. I couldn't be associated with what was going on here. It was a nightmare. And that experience was like dealing with China. Seriously. The discrediting, when I called out the people that needed to be called out, and the response again was like a communist attack, because the freedom movement here worked as hard as BLM did against me and Q. And that's why I'm like, oh my God, they're all like peas in a pod. And the angry Albertan has discovered it all himself as well. And finally, it's kind of nice to have somebody to talk to about it. Because honestly, it's an experience that when you're a person like Josh that has been working his ass off for no pay, like me, trying to educate people and bring people together, and then all of a sudden they're spoon feeding the media and creating a torch Jericho walk and hijacking your protests that you've been doing for like since last year. Like, he was out there right away, and they've built a fantastically credible group, and then they want to drop associations to the Capitol. It's just mind-boggling to me. And again, spoon-feeding the media, because, oh yeah, I thought I'd end with this one. This was City News in Edmonton, and I knew that the media would be rife with exactly the reasons that the angry Albertan canceled his normally scheduled protest. And it's these two lines from City News that says it all. Here we go. Where did I go with that? Some experts say the imagery and speakers tied to the event demonstrate an agenda beyond pandemic concerns. Some believe the goal was to draw newcomers to more radical beliefs. Groups like this can be tied in and bring people into this movement without them really understanding what it's entirely about, said Kurt Phillips of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. You see, all those protesters fed the narrative, and the narrative was known because Josh called it before this protest went down. So again, my 100% support to Josh, Angry Albertan, David and Karen Dickinson, who have been there and again are credible voices to their efforts of bringing awareness to what's going on, and again, creating proper channels in order that we can get to the bottom of this. Because hanging out with well-known racists and stuff, that's just not the way to go about it. Again, when you're not a racist, you don't want to hang out with racists. And again, that's what I've seen. It was like, because I don't believe in these restrictions, now I have to stand with these people? No, absolutely not. Not if I was dead. They've got us coming and going, guys. And again, that's a communist infiltration. And as far as I'm concerned, we have to continue looking at who is benefiting right now from all of this and who's hurting. Because from where I'm standing, China is winning. And all their systems are coming here, which tells me that they're not in control of our country anymore. The fact that they've got the Northwest Territories completely locked down. Okay, there's only 45,000 people that live in that entire territory, guys. Like 44,000 of them. Like, again, not many people live in the territory. They are pretty much confined to the cities. But you can't travel around without a pass. Only essential workers in. And again, when all this happened, there was only one case. Okay, there is no reason for that unless there is a complete reorganization. Now, the other thing people need to understand is because I am a sky watcher, flight radar is my thing. And from the beginning of the pandemic, the air traffic from China dropping in Alaska and then heading to the States was massive. if you get on Flight Radar 24, I want you to take a look at the air traffic, and it's one after another. Now, I watched it before all this, and it was never that busy up in Alaska, I can assure you. In Anchorage, no way. In fact, as I was filming it, as it was starting out last year, the SO2 mass was quite extensive over the ocean, where there was no source of SO2, particularly in that area. So this is, again, the air traffic is massive. So what is going on? Anyway, don't want to freak anybody out, but it's something that we really should be paying attention to, because, again, everything that's happening, again, is not supporting sustainability for us at all. Not sustainability for our lives, not sustainability for anything but corporations, government, control. I think the lockdowns were not just to destroy the economy, leave people with stress for the vax, but also to empty buildings so they could replace, go in, redesign, replace the light. Absolutely, Kelly. I actually absolutely agree with you on that, Frontier. It's a way to, again, it's a reset us forward, for sure. And again, in any shakeout like that, like, let's say you're a landlord and you've owned a property for a million years and it's just not going away. But with something like this happening, you may, again, part company with that property. What I learned from these vloggers at the beginning too was that a lot of Chinese, they appoint people to man their groups, like on Facebook. So, for example, there's one guy here that I think actually he's the admin on landlord groups, and he was one of those suspicious people that was really a source of problems for me here in Regina, and ultimately worked a pretty good hate campaign. And he is involved with all these groups, and again, just what I listen to those vloggers talk about. And you have to, this is multilateral, multi-tiered. And again, until you experience these things, and the confusion, because the confusion was really big at the begining. When I got involved in the lockdown protests, like, I didn't know anybody at those protests. Nobody. None of the people that I had known before, they didn't go to them at all. And in fact, I really don't see a lot of those people anymore. If there was an emergency, we would be surrounded by the symptomatic, for sure. Absolutely. Here we go. Definitions were changed, new concepts introduced, mass psychosis introduced by the mainstream media, and legal indemnity was sought to force us to live under martial law and take the drugs we refuse to take after these companies, yes, plead guilty in court for lying about safety. I shared on Telegram today a little film about our buddy Bill Gates and his history with vaccines and the mass killing of Indian girls, Africans. It's well known. When I was in Uganda, guys, in 2015, it was very weird because I saw 2 burned out UN vaccination buses. And when I inquired, like, the people, they don't like them. They don't trust them. They know. We wouldn't, well, again, Elizabeth, I have met one person that's had COVID and it wasn't a thing. But I'm meeting a whole lot of people who are being quarantined and they're not sick. And again, they're using it as an opportunity with the families. One woman that I know that has 13 kids, oh my God, they couldn't wait to get in her house. I mean, again, not having any respect for how difficult that must be to start with. Honestly, 13 kids, that's a lot. But the fact that they provided her with 4 different release dates and just ridiculous terms, to the point where they said that the newborn baby had to stay home, but she was allowed to go out. But she's like, I can't leave the newborn to take the kids to school. So she was, trying to assume her motherly duties and drive the kids to school. And again, public health making it difficult. Another thing that we should talk about quickly is, now, when I started doing some research, it was a lawyer in Vancouver that was all over the mask, trying to push the mask. Chinese lawyer. Same Chinese lawyer that has started all of the transgender kerfluffle. Again, Chinese influence. Because who benefits from that? Again, transhumanism, that's one of their things. They're making it like the technocrats, but the technocrats are feeding them. Another interesting thing before I take off, because this is going on, but on the day Bill Gates held Event 201, which was October 18th, 2019, there was the Wuhan military games beginning and the opening ceremonies in Wuhan. Now, those opening ceremonies were it's a 2-hour, it's on YouTube. I'll put the links in the comments. You should watch it because it does take you through China's history and all of that. But when you get to the 2-hour and 14-minute mark, you get what's happening now. And it's literally a depiction of China taking us into the future. Because China is the future. And of course, this entire play is about the military and the UN military taking over the world. Like, you really got to see this. Because that was last year, I found that in the spring. Again, I was like, oh my God, is this the plan? Is China behind the UN? Because again, China is running the show. In fact, there was like a 200-odd page report, it was like a huge report, not 200, it was 2,000, it was something massive, that was to be released about the Uyghur Muslims and what was happening to them. And somehow Greece, who was bailed out by China a few years ago, I don't think they vetoed it, but somehow it was pushed off the table and Greece was responsible for that. Basically, they're invested in every country from China, again, in the Belton Road initiative. And I've seen them in action in Africa. Like, I got followed in Ecuador. I got it in Uganda before. That's kind of how I picked it up in when I was in Ecuador, because I'm always filming in Ecuador. If I'm driving in a cab, I'm filming. I went out on the harbor on a boat filming. And anyone doing that in their territory, and they're heavily invested in that area, you never see Chinese people. They work through proxy. But Manta is another town. Manta is when I first started going there, 11 years ago, Correa had just taken over as president. And he kicked out there was an air base, a U.S. military base in Manta. And their lease came up and Correa said, bye-bye, see you later. And the fact is that the U.S. has never tried to take that back again. And when I was there at that time, this is about 2011-ish, I was driving through Colombia with this planned Colombia contractor from Bogota to Santa Marta. It was through all guerrilla, paramilitary, U.S. military territory. Like, there's all sorts of cooperative agreements going on. But I found it interesting that China is so invested in Ecuador and the US was saying nothing about it, because honestly, I believe this is all kind of divvied up already. Uganda was the same thing. The Chinese were absolutely, they paid for all the infrastructure, heavily invested, but again, you never see a Chinese person running around. But you get followed a lot. Let's see this here. Oh, I think you just kept writing. Yeah. This whole new sustainability agenda, again, toxic sustainability, it's not the true sustainability that we were talking about. This, again, is about containing us into a world where we are genetically manipulated into what we are. And the weak will not survive this. See, our society for all these years has been all about caring for the weak. But in their estimation, clearly, that's not sustainable. It's not for a healthcare system. Yet they fed the situation. Big food has fed it. See, the thing is, you see when you see the big picture, you're just like, oh my God, it's so sad. Because again, they've literally helped create, well, they literally created these problems over the years. They have. And now those problems will filter, for sure. Well, the thing is, they have a test and it's internationally accepted. That's the bottom line. They can say whatever they want here, but the PCR has been accepted. It has. And now we're required, like literally, if you leave the country, you have to get one before you come back. So you have to get one before you leave. And then on the way back, get one. And then get another one when you get into the 3-day quarantine. And then what? Another one after that? It's just, again, a PCR industry has quadrupled. I mean, more than that. They use the PCR test for the flu too, you know. But again, who ever tested for that? Only in homes or places that, institutions that they would possibly do that. And they would most likely only do that to diagnose a flu if someone was getting very ill, again with complications. It's an NWO takeover. Stop getting distracted by city-state China. Yeah, but bottom line is it's Chinese tactics. And again, Bill Gates him and Warren Buffett are the kings of the China model. They are the push behind it. So it is a cooperative effort with China. And what I'm trying to actually instill is the fact that we need to stop thinking about the UN like all these international guys and start understanding that the UN military will be China. That's who it will be. And they have lots. You see, a lot of places like here in the United States, oh yeah, that would never happen. But no, sheer volume, my friends, especially in Canada. And plus, they don't need an army anyway. I mean, they can do whatever they want, right? Seeing people walking alone with masks on, I see a delusion that the authorities have given power to the deluded in the form of group control. Yeah. Guess what we've all learned? How quick it is to form a habit. Now, this is funny. See, everybody's like, oh, these people walking outside with a mask. Well, here, if it's minus 15 I have my Nana mask on. I do outside because I'm aging, thanks, and I like my skin. I'm not fond of Botox. That's not sustainable for me. So covering my face where it's cold out, for sure, absolutely. I also don't have to wear this damn thing all day. I don't have to do that. I would never subject myself to any place or person that would make me cover my face. So I have to go shopping for food, and that's when I'll do it. And again, for cold. But here in Saskatchewan, people are wearing the mask outside because it's warm. Because normally they would have a scarf wrapped around, like when it's minus 30. That's how you see people. You look like the abominable snowman. So it was a guy who actually said to me, I was talking, I always talk, like, how do you like the mask? And he was like, I don't mind it outside. And I started laughing because, of course, I'm dealing with all you guys all day. They're like, those idiots wearing the mask outside. But yeah, where I live, it has a function. The other thing is if you don't put the mask on, okay, in ambient temperature, like being in your house, and you wait till you're outside and then your face is exposed to the cold, and then you put it on, that's when you snot up. And then you've got a snot factory. So what I was actually coming to the conclusion of is that people here, and I was watching it the other day, people in their cars putting on their mask and then getting out and walking to the car because they've already figured that out, that they're going to snot up. So people have already streamlined how they wear it, again, as part of their behavior, and they're learning about working around normally acceptable bodily functions, because again, the snotty nose is not part of that anymore. Interestingly enough, I was in the grocery store yesterday and I was wearing my Nana mask, and this guy, I heard him and he started sneezing, and he was literally all over, like he wasn't covering, and he did it 3 times. Of course, he wasn't wearing a mask. And I wasn't the only person just going, oh my God, like really. But again, just clueless. So this is why they've demanded that we do it. So to contain that. Again, I'm not fond of people who spread viruses all over the place. I'm not. But I'm also, I believe in humanity. And we should not be afraid to sneeze or cough or anything like that. But this is, again, a behavior they're instilling in us to, again, stay home if that is questionable. And again, the mask is about that being questionable. It's a whole new standard of what is expected of humanity. It is. We used to just be able to run around and do what we wanted. And now, if we're in one of their spaces, we can't do that anymore. We're contained. And we're behaved. There's no room in these stores or with any of this, if we haven't noticed, to again, have the power we did as consumers in these stores and retailers. And once this social credit system's all wired in here, because it already is, believe me, again, I had problems with WestJet. They were expecting me to be, like, I showed up and I was late for my flight and all of that, and I was wearing my face covering, and she wouldn't accept it. But she was also gaslighting me. Like, she was expecting me to be a difficult client. She was expecting an anti-masker. And yeah, I am. I don't want the mask. But I wasn't there to challenge her at all. But she was trying to maneuver me into actually being difficult. And I refused. Kind of like how the media likes to maneuver the freedom movement exactly where they want them. And again, this gaslighting. It's like we're dealing with AI already. And again, these responses from staff are like AI responses. Doesn't matter what the law is. It doesn't matter. We all have to comply. Crazy. Well, the importance of Uganda and Ecuador are the fact that again, they have an Agenda 2030 plan, but they also have huge Chinese investment in infrastructure. And again, even though you don't see a Chinese person walking around, they've got people all over watching anybody who is in that territory doing anything like they own that territory already. In Uganda, again, the Chinese have bought up a great portion of that country. And they also, again, invest with proxies and in real estate. Real estate is huge, guys. Again, I don't have a problem with Chinese people at all. I don't. I have a problem with the CCP government because it's communist government. And they have big plans about them being the future of the world. And again, found that in propaganda from this Lao Wai and Serpenza on their podcast, ADV podcast. I think it was their last one, where they actually spoke about this. And it was state-sponsored people on social media talking about how China was the future. It was the tagline. And it was basically the same piece in multiple pieces that they pulled from social media in different contexts, but all with the same state message. And again, the same message I saw in those military games opening ceremonies. And they also had the Great Awakening in there too, right? So again, the intrinsic connection, truly. Because again, this agreement does not benefit Canadians, the Brits, the Australians. It doesn't. It actually disadvantages us, Canadian children, of course, because what's going to be left? It's not good. They control a lot. And I do definitely encourage you to watch YouTube. Pick up Laowhy 86, LAOWHY 86. I'll put their channels in the comments. Serpenza, and then their collective podcast called ADV Podcasts. You learn a lot. And from their propaganda lessons, you will start to recognize it around you, even here in the West. In any case, everybody, have a fabulous evening. Thanks for hanging in there. And I'm going to get back to marketing. I'm going to do a new ad for Not a Mask. Blow these out because they're the heavier ones for winter. This one's called Maroon Dreams. Have a great night. Ciao.